I have always been amused by a kind of a paradox. Suppose you go around and ask people. The United States, as you know, before 1914 had completely free immigration. Anybody could get on a boat and come to these shores, and if he landed on Ellis Island, he was an immigrant. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? You will find hardly a soul who will say it was a bad thing. Almost everybody will say it was a good thing. But then I suppose I say to the same people, but now what about today? Do you think we should have free immigration? Oh, no, they'll say, we couldn't possibly have free immigration today. Why, that would flood us with immigrants from India and God knows where. We'd be driven down to a bare subsistence level. What's the difference? How can people be so inconsistent? Why is it that free immigration was a good thing before 1914 and free immigration is a bad thing today? Well, there's a sense in which that answer is right. There's a sense in which free immigration, in the same sense as we had it before 1914, is not possible today. Why not? Because it is one thing to have free immigration to jobs. It is another thing to have free immigration to welfare. And you cannot have both. If you have a welfare state, if you have a state in which every resident is promised certain minimum level of income or a minimum level of subsistence, regardless of whether he works or not, produces it or not, well, then it really is an impossible thing. If you have free immigration in the way in which we had it before 1914, everybody benefited. The people who were here benefited. The people who came benefited. Because nobody would come unless he or his family thought he would do better here than he would elsewhere. And the new immigrants provided additional resources, provided additional possibilities for the people already here. So everybody could mutually benefit. But on the other hand, if you come under circumstances where each person is entitled to a pro rata share of the pot, to take the extreme example, or even to a low level of the pot, then the effect of that situation is that free immigration would mean a reduction of everybody to the same uniform level. Of course, I'm exaggerating. It wouldn't go quite that far, but it would go in that direction. And it is that perception that leads people to adopt what at first seem like inconsistent values. Look, for example, at the obvious, immediate, practical case of illegal Mexican immigration. Now, that Mexican immigration over the border is a good thing. It's a good thing for the illegal immigrants. It's a good thing for the United States. It's a good thing for the citizens of the country. But it's only good so long as it's illegal. That's an interesting paradox to think about. Make it legal, and it's no good. Why? Because as long as it's illegal, the people who come in do not qualify for welfare. They don't qualify for Social Security. They don't qualify for all the other myriads of benefits that we pour out from our left pocket into our right pocket. And so as long as they don't qualify, they migrate to jobs. They take jobs that most residents of this country are unwilling to take. They provide employers with workers of a kind they cannot get. They're hard workers, they're good workers, and they are clearly better off. If you ever want to know how what people prefer, the surest sign is how they vote with their feet. Then there is no doubt how the braceros vote. They vote to cross the border with their feet, on their feet, or in any other way they can, by the thousands and perhaps millions, for all I know. Illegal immigration is fascinating because it shows not only the main point I'm trying to bring out now, how interconnected are the various aspects of freedom, how interconnected is the problem of governmental arrangements for welfare and governmental arrangements for immigration and other things. But it shows a very different point that's kind of a digression. And that is how bad laws make socially advantageous acts illegal, and therefore leads to an undermining of morality in general.
Illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is a huge political and economic issue and is talked about in every corner of the United States. There has been illegal immigration since the 19th century. Before then, it wasn't a big deal. People would just come and go. But in 1875, a federal law was passed which prohibited entry of convicts and prostitutes. This was the beginning. In 1882, Chester A. Arthur, the President of the United States, banned almost all Chinese immigrants. This was a big deal because they were a big part of our labor workforce. Ellis Island was the New York portal for illegal immigration from 1881 to 1920, almost 40 years. This first picture that's about to pop up, those are all immigrants waiting to come into the United States. They started off letting in about 600,000 immigrants a year. And in that 40 years, 23.5 million immigrants poured into the U.S. from all over the world. But as it went on, they slowly started to realize how big of a problem this is turning into. So they reduced the amount of immigrants allowed in the U.S. year by year until it got down to around 157,000 immigrants a year. In 2014, there were 11.3 million immigrants in the U.S. That's making up about 3.5% of the United States population. That's actually a lot. It has decreased since its peak in 2007, though, which was 12.2 million, about 4% of the U.S. population. That is 4% of the U.S. population is illegal. They don't even have any papers saying they're U.S. citizens. Out of those 11.3 million immigrants to date, there's about 5.6 million Mexican immigrants. Just Mexican. That's about 49% of all immigrants. You probably wonder where all these immigrants are staying at. Why don't we really see them? Why can't we tell where they're at? But as a matter of fact, 6 states alone account for 60% of illegals. Most of them stay in California, Texas, Florida, New York. Those are the bigger ones, but these stats are changing every year because they move.
While moving all over, they have influence all over the United States, which is what helped start the nation's most violent street gang, the MS-13. Even though a lot of the immigrants coming over are children, most of them have connections to the MS-13, which make it easy for them to recruit. The MS-13 are responsible for most violent crimes in the United States and are the primary distributors of most illicit drugs. It is now said that there are members crossing into the United States with children and women to disguise themselves and get through easier. Reports say the number of MS-13 members that cross over the border increase each year. This is a big problem for Texas because they presume to already have 100,000 illegal immigrant gang members in their states. But in 2008 to 2012, around 143,000 illegals were arrested and charged with their crimes. But in the last 4 years, there's been 500,000 charges against illegals.
Not even with these dangerous gang members. There are some that just want to come here to better their lives. These certain immigrants help our economy grow. And if we lose them, we lose about 5.2% of the U.S. labor force. This is a big deal, and that is a big difference. That is a lot of our workforce to lose. And also, not to mention, that certain segments of the economy, like agriculture, are entirely dependent upon illegal immigrants. It is shown that if milk producers' illegal workforce were eliminated, milk prices would increase by 61%. It is also said that most produce farmers, around 70% of them, are ran or worked by illegal immigrants. So lose them would be to lose 70% of our state's produce.
Between 2012 and 2013, the foreign-born population increased by about 523,000, or 1.3%. This is a big deal because it shows how many illegals are actually here in the United States. The new studies show that 28% of the 41.3 million foreign-born in the United States are Mexican, making them by far the largest immigrant group in the country. Between 2000 and 2013, the 5 states with the largest absolute growth of immigrants were Texas, California, Florida, New York, and New Jersey. But the 5 states with the largest percent growth is South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and Arkansas. This is a big deal because it shows how they move all over the United States.